Once upon a time in the forests of Russia there was a village. And in that village there were families. Carpenters and tailors and farmers. And there was one family there where there was a young girl who had a toddler brother. And the parents had to go off to do some work. And they told the daughter, "Now, stay in the house with your little brother and keep watch of him. We've heard that the black geese are flying around, and if the black geese see a little toddler crawling around, they swoop down and carry him off to Baba Yaga. You know what happens to them, right?" Yeah. So stay in the house, keep the door closed and locked, and stay in the house. Well, the young girl, she listened to her parents for a while, but she heard her friends playing outside on the road, and she thought, well, it's just across the road, and, well, you know what? I can take my little brother with me and keep an eye on him. There's no way the black geese could catch him if I'm keeping an eye on him. And so she took her brother out with a few sticks to play with, and she went to play with her friends in a field just at the edge of the village, within sight of the woods. And as she and her friends skipped and danced and sang songs, the little brother played with his sticks there, not far away. But as time went on, the other girls eventually finished playing and singing and dancing and went off to their homes. And the big sister looked around and couldn't find her brother. She looked all across the field and he wasn't there. She looked in the yard around the house and he wasn't there. She looked in the house and all his favorite hiding places and he wasn't there. Her heart started pounding. Her parents would know. Her parents would blame her for her brother disappearing, and truth be told, it was her fault. She didn't do what she was told. And so, she set off right away, gathering up some food, wrapping it in a kerchief, and heading off into the forest. See, that's where everyone said Baba Yaga lived, in her house that sat atop 2 giant chicken legs. As she was walking along, she came to a little creek, and in a puddle next to the creek she saw a little fish gasping in the shallow water. "Please, please, little girl, help me," said the fish. And even though she was in a rush to find her brother, she took a few moments and reached down and picked up the fish and dropped it back into the stream. The fish dove down into the water and came back up and said, "Little girl, little girl, let me thank you for helping me." And poof, he spit out a little shell that landed on the shore, a little snail shell. And he said, "Take this with you. When you need my help, throw it behind your left shoulder and you'll get some." The little girl had no idea that this shell was actually worth anything, but she stuffed it into her pocket. She figured in her pocket was a good place for something that might be helpful someday. Besides, it was polite to take a gift. The fish turned and dove into the water and disappeared. And she continued on her path across the stream and into the woods. There in the woods, she heard a little voice saying, "Help! Help! 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 Help!" And she found next to a tree a little trap, and in the trap was a squirrel, his paw caught fast. She thought, "Oh, little squirrel, let me give you a hand." And she got a thick stick and she pried open the teeth of that trap, and the little squirrel pulled his paw out and ran up a tree. Zing! But a moment later he came back down and said, little girl, thank you for helping. Let me give you a gift." Poof! And he spit a little acorn and it landed plunk into her hand. "When you need help, throw it behind your left shoulder." "Thank you, squirrel," said the girl, and put the acorn with the shell in her pocket. And she continued on her journey. It wasn't long till she came to a small clearing, a little meadow in the forest, and she heard, "Help me, help me, help me." And she looked around. She couldn't see anyone, at least no human. But as she listened, she saw it was a little gray mouse. It was pushing as hard as it could on a big rock. Please help me, this rock fell over the entrance to my house. I can't get home. Now it was a huge rock for a mouse, but not a big one for a girl, so she picked it up and tossed it over to the side. And the mouse dove into the hole. She was about to leave when suddenly the mouse popped up again and said, little girl, help. You helped. And so let me give you a gift. And poof, spit out a little pebble. It was a beautiful blue and gray pebble, the kind she had never seen before. When you need help, said the mouse, toss it over your left shoulder. She thanked the mouse and put the pebble in her pocket. It wasn't long after that she came to the black woods where they said Baba Yaga lived. The trees, they didn't have leaves, just black, scraggly trunks. And she sneaked quietly up to the gate. Instead of opening it and making it creak, she climbed over. She saw all the black geese sitting on the roof of Baba Yaga's house. But she was very quiet and slow, so she didn't startle them. She sneaked right up to the steps and carefully went inside. She could hear a loud snoring noise, the snoring of the witch herself. And there inside she could see her brother playing with some little sticks on the floor of Baba Yaga's house. There was already a pot boiling in the fireplace. And Sister knew right away it was time to save her brother. So she sneaked in, grabbed her brother, and sneaked out. She lifted him over the fence, climbed over herself, but when she picked up her brother again and began running, the geese saw her and they said, honk, 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 honk. Baba Yaga woke up and she looked around and said, someone's stolen my dinner! And she ground her metal teeth together and began running on big, long, bony legs out of the house and over the fence and out through the forest. The sister looked back and saw Baba Yaga gaining, so she reached into her pocket and thought, well, maybe this'll help, and she threw the little shell behind her left shoulder. And suddenly, poof! An immense lake appeared right there in front of Baba Yaga. And Baba Yaga, of course, she can't swim, but she bent over and began drinking. And in no time at all, she had drunk the entire lake and ran across the dry lake bed. And as the girl was running, she looked back and once again saw Baba Yaga and heard that chonk, chonk, chonk of her metal teeth and knew she had to run even faster, carrying her brother in her arms. She just barely reached into her pocket, grabbed out the acorn and threw that behind her too. And poof! A huge thick forest appeared, the trees so tight together that Baba Yaga couldn't run through, even as stick-thin as she is. But she opened her mouth and began chewing with those metal teeth, chomp, 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 till she had eaten a hole right through the forest. And she started running once again on those long, bony Baba Yaga legs. And the sister was now starting to feel like she couldn't run much further. She reached into her pocket and threw that last item, the little blue and gray pebble, right over her shoulder. And suddenly, kaboom! A huge mountain appeared, bigger than any mountain ever seen before. Baba Yaga ran up to the mountain. She couldn't drink it. She couldn't eat a hole through it. So she stopped, turned sadly and walked back to her chicken leg house. And people say to this day, well, that's where the Ural Mountains came from in Russia. All because of a girl who saved her brother and received gifts from the animals by helping. And that's the end of the story.